Learn the most empowering hiring techniques. Land the most desirable talent. Launch your company towards massive success. This is the Higher Power Radio Show with your host, Rick Girard.
All right, so I was grabbing coffee with a CEO named Gary last week, and Gary was venting about the talent shortage because he couldn't find a project manager with the exact 5 years of experience he wanted. Now, I asked him about the candidate he rejected the day before, a guy who applied for a marketing role, but had incredible organizational skills and drive. Now, Gary looked at me and he said, he's a marketer, not a manager. It's the wrong bucket list. And I kind of thought for a minute, and what popped in my brain was Gary was looking at the label, not the contents. He was letting great cultural fit walk out the door because he couldn't see past the resume, which today is full of buzzwords and bullshit. Today's guest built a multi-million-dollar empire by ignoring the labels, breaking the corporate standards, and hiring the person, not the paper. I'm Rick Girard, and welcome to the Higher Power Radio Show. We help entrepreneurs and executives win the strongest people. We do so by sharing insights from top-performing rebel entrepreneurs, game changers, and industry leaders, like our guest today, Mr. James Swanson. Now, James is the ultimate business disruptor and author of Super Stoked. He's a lifelong punk rocker, and he brought the DIY ethos of the 80s hardcore scene into the corporate world by building a Las Vegas printing empire that literally covered the strip. From wrapping the New York Statue of the Liberty to installing over 1 million square feet of casino graphics, James dominated the market by ignoring industry standards and focusing on sheer execution. Before successfully exiting in 2022, James scaled his operation from 50 employees and over $7 million in annual revenue, all without a resume-first mindset. He is proof that you can build a market-leading business by prioritizing authentic relationships and radical responsiveness over corporate formalities. Now leading an LED startup, James teaches founders how to break the mold, hire for potential, and win by being unapologetically themselves, which is what makes James the perfect expert for today's topic. James, welcome to the Higher Power Radio Show today.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, it's great to have you. Man, you know what? That was probably my longest intro that I've ever done with anyone. And I note to self, I need to cut that down. But
I didn't mind it.
Yeah, I know, right? It's always nice to hear nice things about yourself, correct?
Yeah, that's true. Thank you very much for that.
Oh, absolutely. Well, so, in full disclosure, I've known James since we were like in our 20s, right? So, and James, on a personal note, has always been like just this hard charging, like can't stop you, like he just goes. He's like always in. I've admired him for a long time, and I'm really happy to have you on the show today to kind of talk about how you built Screaming Images, and then how you were able to kind of, really build around your core values as a person, and essentially the people who were around you all resonated with that. So let's talk a little bit about that. So let's talk about the standard kind of corporate blinders, so to speak. I mean, what did you when you decided to start up the company, what did you do? Like, what was in your mindset, or what did you do to think I'm not gonna build this the way everybody else builds it?
Well, I was working for a couple of printing companies that were new into what they called at the time digital printing or photo, which has now become grand format printing. Mm-hmm. And I was bringing in big clients, and I didn't have a lot of experience in sales and no experience in business, but I had a lot of people experience, and I just saw them treating people poorly and doing things that I didn't agree with. They were taking shortcuts on quality, and I just thought, man, I could do this better if I could make all the decisions myself. And the ultimate two things were customer service and quality. I wasn't going to short the customers, and
Yeah.
that was what set me off on my own little journey. I never expected that it would go as far as it ended up going, but my goal was to take care of the people, and I just followed where it led.
So you kind of took more of a human element to it, like you're going to take care of your people, and your people would naturally just take care of your customers.
Yeah, I mean, I look at it from the perspective of I'm a customer too. Like I buy other things in my life. How do I like to be treated when I'm buying things? You know, I don't want someone to respond to me in a week when I'm trying to spend money with them. I want them to give me quality stuff, and I want them to give me a fair market value. And I don't know, it's just it comes down to like common sense and courtesy to me. Like be a courteous person.
Yeah.
And I kind of started it all there.
Got it. So, talk to me about like maybe some of the challenges that you had when you started kind of building the business and hiring people.
Well, some of the challenges. I mean, I was a small company, and I was working with some pretty big folks, walking in some pretty big circles, and like NFL, NBA, big corporate names, Coca-Cola, and I had to rely on other people. Before I had my own full team, I had to rely on other people for things,
Mhm.
and even though it was my own business, I was still, I wasn't doing everything in house. So I had to rely on people for other things. And man, there's shitty people out there. And some of the, I ran into a couple situations where they literally told me, you're a little guy and I'm a big guy. What are you going to do? And so that was a challenge. But I just kept my nose down and stayed honest and worked my way through it. And everything ended up working out really good. Karma's a bitch, and it's true. It's a true story.
Right. I mean, that's so true. What was the biggest challenge though that you had when it came to like you building your team?
Well, trusting myself for one. I mean, when you start your business from scratch and it's just you, and then all of a sudden you start adding people, you're adding expenses, you start adding equipment, you're adding expenses, and it's a tough decision to make, and you think about things like your mortgage and taking care of yourself, and you're taking chances, but then the other side of the coin is like, hey man, no one's going to move forward without taking chances. I mean,
Yeah.
taking risks. And every time I made a big financial decision, a month later, I would think to myself, why the hell didn't I do this a long time ago? Or how did I live without this? It all became easy. And once I got over that hurdle a couple times, it kind of led the way for me not to be so risk adverse, like take the chances. It takes money to make money. And so just, the biggest hurdle is having the guts to take some of those chances.
So tell me about that first hire you made then.
I was shitting my pants, man. I mean, I was like, it was tough, and I'm trying to make sure that he's happy too. Like, are you happy working here? Like, I don't want to make him work too hard. I was trying to take all of these lessons that I learned from being around people in big companies, and it was just hard, man. It was just tough, but it ended up being the best thing I ever did. That first person that I brought aboard.
Yeah, it's always like everybody says, it's always tough going from 0 to 1, right? Like you have 0
Yeah.
employees, and then all of a sudden you're like, okay, I'm going to hire my first person. It's just like going from 0 to $1, probably the hardest part of building the business, right?
Yeah.
Or 0 to $1 million. I mean, whatever it is. That's really interesting though that so that it worked out for you, right? Because
Yeah.
what I've kind of noticed, even in my own business, by the way, like I kind of brought my first co-founder on board who was great, but we were, a year and a half in, we were kind of like, it's not really working right now for both of us, right? So um, it was kind of one of those things where just from a positioning perspective, it just wasn't there, right?
Yeah.
So it's good to you. Like I always appreciate when people get their first hire, their second hire, right, and they're able to kind of grow it. So good for you.
Yeah, I went from 1 to 4 like real quick. Once I realized, well, all of the work that this guy's taken off my plate, if I get another person, they take this thing off, and it was very freeing for me. It was what it did was it allowed me to focus on building the business, bringing more customers in, focusing on what my strengths were. There were menial tasks that I was doing, and menial is a bad word. They were important things, but there are things that I didn't really need to do. There are things that I could have other people do. The things that I couldn't have people do was what I was focusing on, if that makes sense. I was the face of the business. I was the one bringing the customers in. I was the one with the reputation. So I just made sure I stayed in front of the customers. I never made the customers talk to someone else. Someone else did the work, but they always got to talk to me.
Are you listening to the Higher Power Radio Show? For our podcast listeners, we're going to take a quick educational moment from our sponsors.
Yes.
All right, I'm digging in deep with our guest, James Swanson. James was the founder of Factor Media and former co-founder of Streaming Images, and he's written a really cool book, and we'll talk about that at the very end. And that book is called Super Stoked, right?
Yes.
Perfect. All right, so let's kind of dig into. So when you hire that first person, I want to delve into that a little bit. I mean, by the way, been there, crapping your pants, but then you're like, why didn't I do this a long time ago? Not knowing much. Talk to me about how I think you shared with me a story about how you were kind of building the organization up and you started kind of looking outside of your natural lens, and rather than looking at the resume, and what you started doing was it a project manager that you had? Yeah. So talk to me a little bit about that story about the project manager who you kind of pivoted in the interview process to something else.
Yeah. So I had an ad out for a designer, like a pre-press person. And pre-press is kind of setting up the files to send them out to the printers, and design is a part of it. All graphic design stuff. And I had a girl come in, and she was super cool. I mean, she sat in my office, and we had a really good conversation for like half an hour. I really enjoyed her personality, and I noticed that she was just an outgoing personality, smart, good talker. And I told her, hey, I go, I don't think that you might be I told her that it might be below her with the position that she was applying for. And I asked her if she wanted to have a position as a project manager where she'd A, make more money, and B, probably have more fun, because the things that my company was working on were the big things around town, the big events, the big casinos, the sports stadiums. So it's a lot of fun when you're working for music festivals and boxing fights, and I just said, hey, would you consider this? And she said, yeah, like right off the bat. And she ended up being my best project manager. She was customer facing. If she was a designer in pre-press, she would have just been in the back and not really talking to anybody. And her personality just warranted more than that for her.
Got it. So it was because of her ability to kind of communicate with you and talk that you thought, hey, look, this is going to be somebody I'd rather put in front of customers than stick in the back.
Yeah, if she could talk to me like that, she could talk to the customers like that. And she was making me feel good. I thought she was smart. I thought she was nice. I thought she had great ideas. And if I think that, the customers are going to think that too.
Gotcha. So there's a couple of things that are going on there. One, you're essentially doing like a personality audit essentially during that interview, and you're thinking, hey, like you probably, like, if you look back now, you probably didn't notice that. You're like, okay, well, I'm digging into the fact that like there might be a better opportunity. Like a lot of people don't do that. They see that I have a role and a need that I need to fill, and essentially like they get hyper focused in on that. So you actually hired a person instead of filling a job, right? Which is a really, really healthy way to look at hiring, because ultimately having great people in your company just helps you scale the business. And the roles are just kind of the roles are in a way just a way to get good people to lean in, right?
Yeah, I agree. And it just comes down to personality. I mean, I never went into anything with a script. I bring them in and just talk to them, like get to know them, like what are they like? Because you could have someone that's super talented, like say I was looking for a designer. I could have someone that's a super talented designer, but they're an asshole,
Yeah,
and you don't want to have that. I don't want to have that kind of person on my team.
yeah,
I'd rather have someone that was nice and smart and that I could train. But I mean, with her, I didn't even have to train her, and the skills that she already had helped her in the project manager role. And with when you're working with big customers, well, not even big customers. When you're working with any customers, they're going to give you work when they trust you, and they're going to give you work when they feel comfortable.
yeah.
And I'm putting her out in front of customers that are billion-dollar in MGM casinos, Caesar casinos, professional sports teams, Las Vegas Raiders, Vegas Golden Knights, that they're using more than one vendor. They have all kinds of work, and if they're comfortable with this person, then they're going to probably send more of that work our way, and that's the way it went.
Gotcha. I love how you did a role pivot there. I mean, essentially, it, you were able to recognize that the person was a cultural match, and essentially pivoted and created. Was this a new role you created, or did you actually have a project management role open at the same time?
Well, the business was growing, and
Yeah.
the project managers have multiple roles. They're managing the projects with the customers from when it comes into the shop to when it leaves. They're entering the orders. They're doing the quotes, and they're the ones that are responsible for making the customer feel good that their job is being taken care of. From the minute that it enters the shop until the minute it gets delivered to their casino or installed on their wall. It's not done until it gets to that moment. So the one of my big rules was not having the customers calling and asking, "Where's my job?" Because I feel like when that's happening, we're not doing our job.
Yeah.
And it goes back to the reason why I left the other companies that I was working for before I started my own company. And so the good project managers are the ones that call and say, "Hey, I just want to let you know your job just finished printing. It's in finishing now. Hey, I just wanted you to know we're on schedule for that installation on Thursday." And the customer's thinking to themselves, "Damn, this is easy. Why am I not giving more jobs to these people?" And it's all just common sense to me, courtesy, just being a good person. Being a good person and taking care of your customer. And it was second nature to me. And so I always
Yeah.
look for people. I always look for people that I could pivot into thinking like that.
So, I mean, you're looking at like over, being overly communicative, essentially, and making sure that people know where things are, so they don't have to reach out to you to ask, essentially.
Right.
Perfect. All right, so let's talk about you start building a team. You had a really good track record of retention, right? So like talk to me about your retention strategy. How did you get people to stay and perform for you and help you grow the business?
Well, I tried. There's industry standards for pay scales for different things like press operators or finishers or installers, and I tried to make sure that they were on top of the pay scale for one. I always give them extra incentives like bonuses or extra days off when they were working hard. I mean, the nature of our industry is, there's times when you have to work really hard. Uh, when a big music festival is coming up, or right before baseball season starts, or right before football season starts, or if you're doing the NBA All-Star game, you're going to have a bunch of work that's going to come in right before that event, and they're going to probably end up having to work some overtime.
Yeah.
So I just made sure that they felt like they were taken care of. I did little things around the shop, like I fed the whole team lunch every Friday, just to make them feel that they were, important to me. My door was always open for them to come in if they wanted to talk to me about anything, personal stuff, their families. Um, I always tried to be flexible when they had to do things with their kids. Um, and it's just, again, and I keep repeating this, but just human being stuff, courtesy
Yeah.
stuff, man. It's important.
Well, another thing you shared with me that was really impressive is like, you're you held people accountable. And you had this one rule within your organization, the 1 hour rule. Tell me about the 1 hour rule, because this is.
Yeah. So if you're sitting, I pay way too many attention to my emails sometimes, but if a customer calls in and offers you a chance to do a $50,000 job, I would say respond within an hour. If you're sitting at your desk and you see the email come through, just respond. And you don't have to do everything they're asking you to do right that second, but just respond and say, hey, I saw your email. Give me a little bit and I'll get right back to you. And it's important. The customers always said to me, your communication is off the hook. And that's important to me when I'm buying something, and so I made it a rule and I let everybody know, like, hey, if I'm sitting in my office and I'm copying on an email to you and you don't respond in an hour, and I know you've been sitting at your desk the whole time, I'm going to go out there and say to you, hey, did you see that email? Just let them know that you saw the email, because when you do that, you let them know that they're important to you.
By the way, that kind of held a mirror up to myself, because I noticed that sometimes I take a day or so to get back on things because I have this tendency to prioritize. Yeah, you know what? So since our conversation, I started implementing on myself the 1 hour rule, because I went through my draft box and I noticed that I started 5 emails a couple weeks ago that I never finished and I never sent out. I started them, I thought I sent them, but I didn't send them, right? So bad on me. James, dude, thank you for sharing this with me. So with the audience actually. So what would be 2 or 3 key takeaways you can give the audience that they can plug into their business today that would help them grow their organization kind of like you did?
Just number one is take care of your customers. I mean, that's the number one thing. And you have to do that. You have to be accountable. If something goes wrong, you have to not make excuses and just fix it. And number 3 is you got to give quality products. Don't try to take shortcuts with the quality, and just be honest. And those are the biggest takeaways for me.
Gotcha. James, thanks so much for your time investment today, and I want to welcome you to the Higher Power Radio community. Now, what would be the best way in which members of the audience can find you, find your book, all that good stuff?
LinkedIn is a good way to get a hold of me, just James Swanson. There'd be a picture of me wearing a baseball hat on my profile picture. It's kind of my trademark. And the book is on Amazon. If you search for James Swanson, Super Stoked. And then there's also a link to get it from directly from me, and that's a website and it's superstokedbook.com.
Do you want to give a quick plug in the book? What's it about?
The book?
Yeah.
The book tells the story about how I built my business, how I was kind of an unruly punk rock kid in Hollywood, and you can attest to that. As you said earlier, we've known each other for a long time.
Yeah.
I came a long way from where I was in the old Hollywood beach days to where I ended up at. So it kind of tells the story of how I did it. It kind of tells the story in more detail of the things that we were talking about today, my beliefs in business, the punk rock ethos that I brought into everything, and how it kind of all tied together. How I stayed within my personality. It's all detailed in there, and there's a lot of takeaways for in there for someone that's either starting their own business or just in sales.
You didn't mention in the book our trip to Tijuana that one time, did you?
I sure did. I sure did.
Nice.
Word for word.
All right. Well, I want to thank you for tuning in this week's episode of Higher Power Radio. Quick thanks to our team, Brian Colburn, Andrea Ballin, and Ayla Girard. If you're listening to the podcast, please subscribe, review, and share. After all the shows for you, we want to continue to bring you valuable content for your business week after week. You can check us out further at Higher, H-I-R-E, Power, P-O-W-E-R, Radio, R-A-D-I-O.com, or you can drop me an email at Rick, R-A-C-K, at Intertru, I-N-T-E-R-T-R-U.ai. I'm your host, Rick Girard, and you have been listening to the Higher Power Radio Show. Aloha.
Thank you for listening to Higher Power Radio. Catch our LinkedIn Live show every Tuesday at noon, or download the podcast on iHeartRadio, iTunes, YouTube, or your favorite podcast platform. We appreciate you joining us on Higher Power Radio with your guide to hiring success, Rick Girard.